In today's video, we're going to be taking a look at how to create a simple to-do app within Flutter using the Hive database. Hive is a lightweight and blazing fast key-value database that's written in pure Dart and can be used to persist any information from your app onto the user's local device. Our app is going to feature the following functionality. We'll have the ability to add to-dos, and then once the to-do has been added, we can click on the checkboxes to mark them as done, and if we hold them for long enough, we can delete them as well. So this is basically the functionality that we're going to be building within this tutorial. So to get started, the first thing that I'm going to be doing is actually installing all of the required dependencies that we need in order for our application to work efficiently. So the first package that we're going to be using is going to be Hive. So I'm going to be copying it, coming back to pubspec.yaml, and then adding it under our dependency section. Once this is done, the next one is going to be Hive Flutter, which is a package that makes it very easy for us to use Hive alongside our Flutter applications. And then finally, I'm going to be using the path provider package to actually get path to a system folder where we're going to be storing or persisting our Hive database to. So with this done, we can do command save and let Flutter pubget do its magic. And while this happens, we can head on over to our main.dart file. Once Flutter pubget has done its magic, what I'm going to be doing is quickly giving a test run to my application to make sure that it's running as intended. As a side note, links to all of the resources that I use within this video, as well as the source code for this application, can be found in this video's description. Once the application is running on the simulator, the first thing that we're going to be doing is configuring Hive to be set up properly so that we can use it within our Flutter application. So to do that, I'll come to main.dart and then come to my main function. And here I'm going to be marking this as async. Once this is done, the first function that I'm going to be calling is going to be widgets. And then from there, Flutter binding dot ensure initialize to make sure that the widget bindings for Flutter have been initialized before I proceed. And then after this, I'm going to create a final variable, which I'm going to call documents.dir. And then I'm going to be setting this equal to await get application documents directory, like so. What this function is going to do is that it's going to return a path to a directory where the application may place data that is user generated. So exactly the place where we'd want to store or persist our Hive database to. Once this is done, we are going to say hive.init. And then after this, what I'm going to be doing is actually passing it the documents directory like so, and then dot saying path like so. Once this is done, the next thing that I'll do is that I am going to be importing the Hive package. And then with this done, we have set up Hive properly. So with this, I'm going to be restarting my application and making sure that we get no errors. And then we can move on onwards to our home_page.dart file, where I have a stateful widget called homepage, which is going to be responsible for showcasing the homepage of our application and managing all of the logic associated with it. Within my homepage state is where most of the logic is going to be going. So the first thing that I'm going to be doing is actually creating a box. A box can be thought of as like a shoebox could be a thing in which you place data, and a box holds certain distinct kind of data. So you can have multiple different boxes within your Hive database, and each box can have some data within it. In this case, our box is going to be a box which is going to store information regarding to-dos. So for that, what I'll do is that I'll say this box is going to be called to-dos box like so. So once this variable has been created, what I'm going to be doing is importing the Hive Flutter package, and then this should pretty much fix the issue for us. Once we have the to-dos box created, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is creating an init state function within my homepage state class, where we're basically going to be setting up our box so that we can use it to input data into it, read data from it, and stuff like that. So before any box can be used within Hive to either read data from or put data into, we need to open it. So for that, what we can do is we can use a function called hive.openBox. And then here we need to give it the name of the box that we want to open. In this case, this name is totally up to you. I'm going to say it's going to be to-dos_box. And then after that, I am going to chain a then call to it. So once the box has been opened, then I want to do something. So what do I want to do? Well, I want to take the box that gets given to us, and then I want to basically call setState within my application, and I want to set the to-dos box to be equal to this box. So now we are holding a reference to this specific box. Once this is done, I'm going to give a quick restart to my application to make sure that everything's working. And with this done, we can move on to the next step. So for the next step, firstly, I'm going to be coming to the build function, and for the scaffold, I'm going to be adding an app bar to it. So I'll copy and paste it in, since this app bar is fairly simple. And now we're seeing an app bar that says noted. Once this is done, I'm going to now add the body attribute to my scaffold. And this is going to be a call to a function, which I'm going to define called build UI, and it's going to be responsible for, as the name suggests, building the UI for the body. And for now, within this, I am going to be returning a container. Then I'm going to be taking this build UI and I'm going to be setting this function call as the body attribute and then doing command save. Once this is done, the next thing that I'm going to be doing is also adding a button to our actual scaffold, which will allow us to show a prompt which the user will use to actually input data for the actual to-do that they want to do. So for this, what I'll do is that I'm going to set a property on this scaffold called floating action button, and then I'm going to be setting this to floating action button, and then from here I'm going to set the on pressed function call to be an empty function for now, and then after that the child is just going to be an icon with an icon which is going to be icons.add like so. So once this is done, we're actually seeing the button here. So I'm going to quickly go to main.dart file and I'm going to change the color from deep purples to red just to make the color scheme uniform. And now we are seeing a red button that we can click on. That nothing happens for now, but we'll come back to adding functionality to this later. So let's tackle actually building the UI. So for building the UI, what I'm going to be doing is that firstly, I'm going to go ahead within my application and check to see if our to-dos box is null. So if the to-dos box is null, that means it's not been opened yet. And if it's not been opened, then what we want to do is that we need to return a center widget within which we have a child, which is a circular progress indicator. So while our box is being opened or it's null, then we just show a circular progress indicator. And then once that is done, then we can actually display our to-dos. So with this done, what I'm now going to be doing is coming to the point where if our to-dos box is not null, then what happens? Well, in the case that this is the case that our to-dos box is not null, then what I want to do is actually read information from my to-dos box, extract that information, and then display that in a list view. So to do that, what we're going to be doing is using a value listenable builder. This is a special type of widget that's within Flutter that allows us to actually listen to value listenables. So for the value listenable, what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to saying is going to be a to-do box dot, and then from here I'm going to say listenable. And if you hover over the listenable, it says that it returns a value listenable which notifies its listeners when an entry in the box changes. So what basically happens is that for the value listenable, we are basically setting that to our to-dos box dot listenable, and every time something happens within our to-do box, it fires an event that comes to the value listenable builder, and then it rebuilds the widget within our builder function that we're now going to be defining. So the builder function basically gets three things. It takes in a context, which is a build context. It takes in the actual value that gets passed to us from the listenable, which is going to be, in this case, a box. So I'm going to be calling it box. And then it also gives us a widget, which is optional, but we're not going to be using it. And then I'm going to be doing command save. Once this is done, within this builder is where we're going to be defining our UI and how it's going to be looking. So what I'm going to be doing is, firstly, I'm going to be saying that we're going to have a sized box, which is going to expand to take up all of the actual space on our screen. And then the child for this sized box is going to be a list view. And the list view that we're going to be using is going to be listview.builder function. So the listview.builder function basically takes in an item count and then that dynamically creates the list view based upon that using our item builder function. So here what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be setting the item count to be the count of items that are within our to-dos box. So to get the count of the items or how many to-dos we have, what I'm going to be doing is creating a variable called final. I'm going to say to-dos keys, and then I'm going to be setting this equal to our to-dos, our box dot keys dot to list, like so. So as I mentioned to you before, Hive is a NoSQL key value based database. So every key has a value that's associated with it. So if we have 10 keys within our box, that means we have 10 to-dos, because each to-do is going to have a unique key that's going to be associated with it. So if we know the count of how many keys we have, then we know how many actual to-dos we have. So this is how we're going to be doing it. And then for the item count, I'm going to do to-do keys dot length, like so. And then for the item builder, we are basically going to be defining a function which takes in a context and the index for the actual element that it needs to build within our list view, and then it returns a widget that is going to display within that list. And in this case, it's going to be a list tile widget. Then once this is done, I'm going to add some commas, do command save. And for now, what I'll do is that I'm going to say that this list style is going to have a title. It's going to be text. And this text is basically going to be index.toString for now, and then we'll come back to actually creating this UI. So now that this is done, since our to-do box doesn't have anything within it, we are not showing anything in our list view. So let's change that. Let's actually set up this function in a way so then when we click on it, it displays an actual dialog to us, which we can input information into, and then put that information into our to-dos box. So to do this, it's going to be a multi-step process. The first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating a function which will return a future void. Then I'm going to say that it's going to be called display text input dialog, like so, and it's going to take in a build context. And then I'm going to mark this function as async and open up its body. Within this function, I'm going to return a call to the function called show dialog. And then the show dialog function basically expects a context as well as a builder, which defines how we're going to be building our dialog. So in this case, we get the function having a context passed to it. And then within this is how we define how our dialog should look. So I'm going to return an alert dialog. And then this alert dialog is going to have a title, and the title is going to be a text widget, which is going to say add a to-do. Then once this is done, I'm going to be taking the display text input dialog function, and I'm basically going to be coming to the floating action button. And for the onPressed function callback, I'm going to say that we're going to, when this button is pressed, call display text input dialog function and pass the context to it. Then if I come back to my application and click on it, now we have an actual dialog that's being displayed to us. And if we click anywhere on the screen besides the dialog, it should dismiss it. Now what I'm going to be doing is coming back and actually styling how our dialog should look. So the content for our dialog should be an actual text field, which will allow us to actually take information from the user and store it somewhere. The context will be a text field. A text field requires a controller. So let's go ahead and define that. So I'm going to go to the top of my class, and then here I'm going to be creating a variable which is going to be final. It's going to be up top text editing controller. It's going to be called text editing controller. And then we're going to be setting it to a new instance of text editing controller. Then I'll come back to the content text field controller and set that to text editing controller. And then once this is done, I'm going to do command save. Then I'm going to click on the plus button to see how the text field is, and it looks pretty good. So now what I want to do is basically update the decoration for this text field to say a hint within our text field. So to do that, I'll just define the decoration property. And now if I click on the plus button, you're seeing a hint is being displayed within our text field. So the final thing I want to do is basically I want to have a button that says OK beneath our text field that when clicked on actually saves the information from our text field into our to-dos box. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is that for my alert dialog, I'm going to define a property called actions, which is a list of widgets. And here I'm going to be adding a material button, which is going to have the color red, text color white, and then a child, which is going to be text OK, like so. And then after this, I'm going to be defining the onPressed property for this material button. So what happens when we press it? So when this button is pressed, all I want to do is that I want to go to my to-dos box and I want to add to it the value that we have basically extracted from our text field. So to do that, I'm going to be adding a map to my to-dos box, and the map is going to have 3 keys. The first is going to be content. So this is the actual content of our text field. So to do that, we can access our text editing controller, and then from there access the text property. And then after this, it's also going to basically store a time, which is going to be a timestamp at which this to-do was created. So this is going to be datetime dot now, and then .to ISO 8601 string. And then finally, it's going to store a property called isDone, which for now is going to be false since we have just created this to do. And once this is done, the next thing that I want to do is once I've actually added a to do to my box, I want to dismiss the alert dialog. So for that, I'm going to say navigator.pop. and pass it the context. And I also want to clear our text editing fields, because now that we've added a to-do, I want to clear it. So for that, I'm going to do text editing controller.clear and do command save. So once this, I'm going to restart my application, make sure that everything is working. And now if I come to the plus button and click on it, you can see that it says add a to-do and to-do. So if I click on this, I can add a to-do. I'm going to say clean room. And then if I press OK, you see it dismisses it. And you're also seeing that now our list view builder is actually displaying the first element within our list, which was the newly added to-do that we had created within it. So now what I want to do is actually display the information for the to-do within our list tile. So to do that, what I'm going to be doing is actually coming back to my value list table builder, then the list view.builder, and then do the item builder function for that. And then for our list tile is where we're going to be defining its properties. So firstly, what I'm going to be doing is that for the text, instead of saying this, what I'm going to be saying is that now we're going to have the actual content of the to-do being displayed here. So to do that within my item builder function, firstly, I'm going to access the to-do. So I'm going to create a variable which is going to be of type map. It's going to be called to-do. And to get it, what we're going to be doing is saying to-dos box, and then from here .get, and then the get function expects us to pass it the key for the actual value that we want to extract from the database. So in this case, the key is going to be the to-dos keys, and then the specific index that we want to get the key for, or that. And once this is done, then I can take the to-do, I can come to my text, and I can say that it's going to be to-do content, to command save. And now you can see it's saying clean room. Once this is done, then what I'm going to be doing is coming here, and I'm going to be saying trailing, which is going to be a checkbox. And the checkbox is going to have a value, which for now is going to be false, and then it's going to have a onChanged callback, which will give us the value when we click on it, and then we can call a function to do whatever we want. But now we can see that there's a checkbox as well. Then I'm going to add a subtitle to my actual list tile, and this is going to be the actual instance at which we had created our to-do. So that's the time key. So I'm going to be adding that and do command save. And now we're seeing the time at which the to-do was created as well. Now that this is done, the final thing that I'm going to be doing is actually showing you guys how, when we click on this checkbox, we can actually update the value for the specific to-do within our actual Hive database. So to do this, what we're going to be doing is coming to our onChanged function callback for our checkbox. And here we're going to be saying that we are basically going to take our to-do, and we're going to set the value property for that to be equal to the value that gets passed in. And then what I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to say await, and I'm going to mark this function as asynchronous. I'm going to do await to-dos box dot put, and then the put function expects us a key at which we need to put in the specific value. So this key is going to be the same key as the list tile that we have clicked the checkbox on. So it's going to be to-dos key index, and then the value here is going to be the to-do that gets passed. And this way we can update the actual content for the to-do, then do command save. Then one final thing I'm going to be doing is that I'm going to be setting the value of the checkbox to be whatever the value for to-do is. And if I do command save, and the reason we were getting the error is because we're setting the wrong key within our map. It needs to be is done, and then we need to get the value for is done. It wasn't value, then do command save, and if we start debugging our application again, everything should work as intended. Welcome back, everybody. So now that the error is gone, let's test to see if our checkbox is working. So if I click on the checkbox, it marks the actual to-do as done. And if I restart my application, you're going to be seeing, since the information was persisted, the state gets persisted, and it's showing us the most up-to-date to-do list. If I click on it again, it actually renders it undone, and then I can click on it to mark it done again. So the final thing I want to do now is actually create the functionality for when we long press on this list tile to actually delete this to-do from our box. So to do this, I'm going to be defining the onLongPress function callback on our list tile. And this function gets called when we long press on a specific list tile. And then within this function is where we want to call the actual code for removing a to-do from our box. So to do this, I'll mark this function as async. Then I'm going to do await to-dos box dot delete, and then the specific key, which as you guys know, is going to be to-dos key and then the specific index. And this is pretty much all you have to do. So if you do command save and restart my application, you are going to see that now if I firstly add a new to-do, so let's just say learn Flutter and add it, and then I'm going to add another to-do, which is subscribe, and then add it. If I mark one of these done, it's working. If I restart my application, it's actually working as intended. And if I long press on one of these, it deletes them from the actual database. So that's pretty much it for today's tutorial. And hopefully now you understand how to create, read, update, and delete data from your Hive database. As always, if you enjoyed the video, then please don't forget to leave a like on the video as well as subscribe to my channel so that you get notified every time I release a new video. If you have any questions, comments, or concerns, feel free to leave them down in the comments below and I'll try my best to answer them for you. And as always, stay happy, stay healthy, keep learning, keep growing, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye-bye.